Harrison Burton officially confirms he'll return to the Wood Brothers in 2024. Hailie Deegan is still working on her 2024 plans, but likely will join AM Racing in 2024. And Nick Sanchez and Matt Crafton get to a post-race fight after the Truck Series race at Talladega. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're going to go ahead by starting talking about the Talladega NASCAR Cup Series race. As yesterday, we saw a record amount of lead changes in the Cup Series race. This was the most super speed lead changes in a post-Stanham era, which was 70 lead changes. A very competitive race, one of the best races of the 2023 season. We saw a lot of side-by-side racing, and the third lane was able to come in. And then to top it off, you had a great photo finish. Obviously, Kevin Harvick unfortunately got disqualified after race. We'll talk about that later in this episode. But nonetheless, I thought it was a really exciting, a very intriguing, and a very good race. And I'm glad to see the race went as well as it did, because I thought it was an awesome, fantastic race. And if you didn't like that race, you probably shouldn't be watching this sport, because that was intriguing, that was fun, and that was an awesome NASCAR Cup Series race at Talladega, and one of the best races for sure of the 2023 NASCAR season. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Jesse Love. With Jesse Love starting the ARCA race at Salem, he was able to win the 2023 ARCA Menards Series Championship. Well deserved for Jesse Love. Obviously does have the best equipment. We know that ARCA does not, really outside of the Venturini cars, no one really has the greatest equipment in the world except Rev Racing. But Jesse Love did what he had to do. He won a lot of races. He made a couple Truck Series starts here as well. He's had a couple pretty good runs in the Truck Series this year in 2023. But it's well-deserved for Jesse Love. Obviously, a lot of talking about him potentially moving up to the Truck Series, maybe a Tricon Garage in the 2024 season. Nonetheless, massive congratulations to Jesse Love. And he actually won the races while dominated and went on to win the championship. So nonetheless, huge congratulations to him on winning the 2023 ARCA Menards Series Championship. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Sage Karam. As it was announced this morning that Sage Karam will drive his 66 for MBM Motorsports this weekend at the Charlotte Roval. Sage Karam has made quite a few starts in the NASCAR Xfinity Series over the last couple years, and he's done a very impressive job with all the teams he's driven for, including with MBM Motorsports. He's qualified very impressively. He's had some pretty solid runs with the team, and he's actually a really solid road course racer as well. Of course, had a chance to win a Road America with Alpha Prime Racing. He wants to run full-time next year in the 2024 season. He's still working on his plans for next year. Nonetheless, so mass congratulations, a well-deserved win for him, and a great win, not win, but nonetheless, a well-deserved to see him back to 6-6. Hopefully, he gets an opportunity shot to maybe run full-time with a certain organization in 2024. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Jordan Taylor. As it was announced on Friday afternoon that Jordan Taylor will drive the 11 for Kaulig Racing this weekend at the Charlotte Roval. Jordan Taylor, of course, a winner of the 24 Hours of Daytona, won it 2 or 3 times in his career, has won a lot of races in championships in IMSA. But Jordan Taylor has also made his NASCAR Xfinity Series debut earlier this year at Portland. Had a really strong run going. I think he had some electrical issues near the end of the race that cost him a shot at the victory, because I think he had a car capable of winning the race at Portland. I think he'll have a really good chance to win this race at the Charlotte Roval. I don't know if he has any experience at the Charlotte Roval before, so that might hurt him. But nonetheless, I think it's a fantastic opportunity for Jordan Taylor. I think he's going to make the best of it, and glad to see that he'll be running with Kaulig Racing at the Charlotte Roval. I think he's got a really good chance to contend for the win this weekend at the Roval. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Bubba Wallace. As it looks like, according to what Bubba Wallace said, and Toby Christie reported on this on Saturday, that Bubba Wallace is looking to run the Snowball Derby in the offseason in 2023. I do not believe Bubba Wallace has ever competed in the Snowball Derby, so if everything works out, this will be the first time he's competing in an off-season event in a very long time. And I think this is really good for Bubba Wallace. He's looking to run more races. Why? It helps racecraft. A lot of drivers over the last few years, we've seen a lot more drivers go and run as many races as possible. We've seen William Byron, Chase Elliott run a ton of late model races in basically the pavement series and also in dirt. We've seen Kyle Larson run a ton of dirt races, and he's gone on to win a lot of races in Cup, but also a ton of racing dirt and a ton of World of Outlaws races. And we've seen a lot of other drivers working toward their plans and working toward doing that. So I think Bubba Wallace going out and running the Snowball Derby is very, very awesome. I would imagine drivers like Chase Elliott and William Byron are probably also looking to run the Snowball Derby later this year as well. And maybe even Matt DiBenedetto, we could see him have a chance to run that event. Nonetheless, I think it's really exciting stuff and very awesome to see that Bubba Wallace is looking to run a Snowball Derby this offseason. I'm looking forward to that when that does end up happening. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Stewart Friesen and Greg Van Alst. Now, if you watched the NASCAR Crafton Truck Series race at Talladega, you saw a couple really scary accidents and a couple drivers that unfortunately were hospitalized. Here's the updates on both of those drivers. First, Stewart Friesen was released from the hospital early on Sunday morning. So yesterday at 12:25 a.m. Eastern, he was released from the hospital. He basically had gotten down on the ground after having a really bad wreck in the Truck Series race coming to the end, I believe, is stage number 2. And Tyler Ankrum, I think Stewart Friesen had something break on the truck. He got into Tyler Ankrum, and it was one of the scariest wrecks I've seen this year. Luckily, Stewart is okay. Unfortunately for Greg Van Alst, he's not so lucky. Greg Van Alst, unfortunately, has suffered a fractured vertebrae and probably will not be running the rest of the season and probably will need time to recover during the offseason. I feel bad for Greg Van Alst because Greg Van Alst has had a terrible year in 2023, basically in the Truck Series. He got this opportunity at Young's Motorsports, and now that his season is likely over because of the injuries, I'm wishing a speedy recovery for Greg. I think he's probably done for the rest of the year, unfortunately. Hope both drivers can recover from their injuries, or Greg can recover from his injuries soon, and we can see him back out on the racetrack. It's from the highs and lows. Of course, won the ARCA opener at Daytona earlier this year. That was one of the best moments, I think, of the year for any driver, and it's just a shame to see that we saw a driver get injured. It's how crazy super speedway races are and how scary super speed racing can be. Very scary situation. At least both drivers have been released from the hospital, but it's a shame that we do have injuries taking place. Really disappointing and unfortunate stuff. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Busch. Now, Kyle Busch, we'll talk about him later in this episode when it comes to Kyle Busch Motorsports. Kyle Busch, during the time, spoke about his racecraft and his driving style. And Kyle Busch says that he needs to have better racecraft with the next-gen car. It's very interesting to hear a two-time NASCAR Cup Series champion who's won 63 NASCAR Cup Series races saying he needs to have better racecraft. But he says he's been at times over-aggressive on the racetrack as well, and it's cost him, especially in the last few weeks. Obviously, Rich Rose Racing had joined them this year in 2023, and Kyle Busch has had a pretty good season. However, in the playoffs so far, we've seen the A-team really, really struggle, and he's made some mistakes as well in the playoffs as well. And at this point, Kyle Busch more than likely he absolutely has to go out and win the Charlotte Roval if he's going to make it to the round of 8. I thought he'd have a chance to make the championship 4 this year, but I feel like in the second half of this year, this team has been really making a ton of mistakes, and it's more than likely going to cost him a chance at the championship. But it's really crazy to think a driver who's a champion of our sport saying he needs to have better racecraft. He needs to be more aggressive, but every time he is more aggressive, he basically ends up crashing his stuff. And that's the thing with the next-gen car. You have to be really, really aggressive, or your car has to be really, really good because it is very, very difficult to pass, especially with the next-gen car. I really hope Kyle Busch can change his racecraft maybe so he can get better on the racetrack. But Kyle Busch really doesn't need to get better. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer, a two-time champion, and he could win the Charlotte Roval this weekend. We know how strong the RCR cars have been especially Kyle Busch has been this year on the road courses. I think Kyle Busch could have a chance to win. The A car historically is really, really great at road courses and will probably have drivers in front of him have trouble in issues. Nonetheless, it's disappointing here that Kyle Busch says he needs better racecraft. Hopefully, he can do really good this weekend at the Roval and make it to the round of 8. But I think it's going to be really tough for him to have a chance and opportunity to make it to the round of 8. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Fox Sports. Now, if you watched the NASCAR Crafton Truck Series race, and I commented on this as well, if you watch, you saw the pretty bad TV coverage. So, let's talk about TV coverage. Now, the Cup Series race for NBC was not perfect by any stretch of imagination. They had a lot of full-screen commercials going on but their coverage was miles better. Everything about the truck broadcast, and I've said this for a long time, this was one of the worst broadcasts I have seen in 2023, and probably one of the worst Truck Series broadcasts I have ever seen in my entire life. There was no energy in the booth. Yeah, Michael Waltrip having a weird foot fetish with Carson Hocevar. They interviewed Zane Smith when he was in the garage, and I don't think Zane Smith really wanted to be interviewed. And they were interviewing drivers with a few laps to go in the race, and I don't think they really wanted to be interviewed so they could focus on that. They took them to over half the race to show the playoff battle going on, so you really didn't know what was going on with the playoff battle for the Truck Series. And just at the end of the day, the ending call by Jamie Little was just so boring. It was just not intriguing and exciting compared to the Cup call, which had a lot of intriguing and exciting things going on with the finish. I say this about Jamie Little. She is a fantastic pit reporter. She's one of the best pit reporters in the industry. She is not a very good lead commentator. She's done a bad job in ARCA calling races, and I think she's done a pretty bad job calling truck races as well. And as much as we crap on Adam Alexander, he's way better. He's gotten better over the years, and Adam Alexander would have done a much better job calling that Truck Series race, and I think he's going to be someone who's going to do a really good job when Mike Joy ends up retiring. It is disappointing to see it because I think that the Truck Series broadcast could be so much better, and it's one of the reasons why no one really cares about the Truck Series playoffs or anything, because they don't care about it. If you don't care about it and you don't show any sort of interest, of course people are going to be tuned out and they're not going to tune in as much. So I was really frustrated and disappointed by the broadcast on Saturday. It was really hard to watch, and it made the race much worse. There were so many full-screen commercials, and to me, that's just frustrating to see so many full-screen commercials, especially for a race that it could be the indications on who can make the championship for, and they just did not do a good job with the coverage and the broadcast. It was just really not that really exciting. I didn't enjoy it, and it was not a great broadcast from Fox. Once again, not a shocking surprise because their broadcasts, in my opinion, have been absolutely horrendous this year, and they've been getting worse and worse every single year in the NASCAR Truck Series. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kevin Harvick. Now, I did a video talking about this yesterday on my YouTube channel. Go ahead and check that out. But if you have been paying attention, last night after the NASCAR Cup Series race, Kevin Harvick had crossed the finish line in second place. Unfortunately, Kevin Harvick was disqualified after the Truck Series race at Talladega due to a windshield violation. I believe that there were some parts of the windshield that were not in properly, and I think it was due to a lot of basically the turbulence. And of course, Ronnie Childers was not going to admit to cheating. There might have been some cheating stuff going on, but again, a lot of their teams, they all pass post-race inspection. In fact, they really, let's be honest, they don't really go after every single team, which they probably should, because every single crew chief and team is probably cheating out on the racetrack, right? But it's really unfortunate for Kevin Harvick especially, because Kevin Harvick, in my opinion, he has been carrying Stewart-Haas Racing in 2023. And don't get me wrong, I don't think the drivers at Stewart-Haas Racing are the problem. I think Eric Almirola, Ryan Preece, and Chase Briscoe are all very, very good and very talented drivers. It's just a fact right now that you've got a team like Stewart-Haas Racing that's making mistakes like that, and they were doing this with Chase Briscoe. They got huge penalties for Chase Briscoe after the Coke 600 earlier this year, especially when he was running in 30th position. They were cheating then, and it's just been a bad, unfortunate for Kevin Harvick. And imagine if Kevin Harvick had won this race. That would have been an even bigger story than I think this is. It's just crazy how frustrating a year Kevin Harvick has been, and I think Kevin Harvick is absolutely ready to get out of this year. We've only got 5 races left, and Kevin Harvick absolutely deserves a better retirement season than this. He's earned the right to have a better year. He's done a great thing for the sport. He's been one of the greatest drivers in NASCAR history, and in my opinion, a first ballot Hall of Famer, and he deserves a better send-off than this. It's just frustrating to see how this year's gone for Kevin Harvick. He's been carrying this team. He's come close to winning multiple times. Had a chance to win at Darlington earlier in the year. Had a really good car in the Southern 500 as well. Had a great chance to win at Phoenix before caution came out. And it's just disappointing to Kevin Harvick's last season. He's going to be going out like this. And I think it's really disappointing and really unfortunate that this season is more than likely ending like this. It's disappointing stuff, and it sucks to see. Again, I'm not sure if they're going to appeal the penalties. If they do, we might bring that in this video later. But we'll see. I don't know if they're going to appeal the penalties. We'll have to wait and see. I think they have till tomorrow or Wednesday to make a decision on that. And if they do, they might try to appeal DQ. But I don't know if you can appeal a DQ at this point, that we've seen a couple times where DQs have been appealed and they've ended up winning. But I'll be honest with you guys, I don't think they are going to win the appeal at this current moment. I think they're going to end up losing because of the window thing getting fractured, unfortunately. So really disappointing stuff, and just sucks to see that ended up happening. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Brett Moffett. Now, I think many of us actually originally thought that Brett Moffett, because AM Racing already announced they're going to have 2 cars in 2024, many of us had thought that Brett Moffett was going to be returning to AM Racing in 2024. However, Brett Moffett said yesterday after winning, actually on Saturday I should say, after winning the NASCAR Crafton Truck Series race at Talladega, he said that he does not have his plan set for 2024. Now, obviously, like I just mentioned a second ago, Brett Moffett went on to win the NASCAR Crafton Truck Series race at Talladega for Front Row Motorsports, which, of course, he drove for Front Row Motorsports back in 2015 as a rookie back then, driving the 34 car, when David Reagan, of course, was driving the 55 car for Michael Waltrip Racing. Of course, did make a few starts with Michael Waltrip Racing as well. If he's not returned to AM Racing next year, I think it's going to be very disappointing. I think he's done a fantastic job with AM Racing this year. However, there is a chance he could potentially drive the number 38 car for Front Row Motorsports in 2024. Remember, next year, Zane Smith is leaving the Truck Series and moving up to the Cup Series in 2024 to drive, I believe, the number 78 car for Spire, because remember, they have acquired the charter, that means Spire Motorsports, from Live Fast Motorsports for $40 million. So that 38 car could be available. But Front Row Motorsports could also be looking to expand to a 2-truck operation in 2024. And among the candidates that could have a chance to drive for that are Frankie Muniz as well. Frankie Muniz has been linked to the 38 truck as well for 2024. He's been linked to maybe another ride for 2024 as well, because Frankie Muniz has said publicly that he wants to move up to the NASCAR Xfinity Series or the Truck Series in the 2024 season. But I think if Brett Moffett does go to Front Row in 2024, which I think there's a good chance of possibly that could end up happening, I do believe that Brett Moffett will absolutely be a championship threat or a contender, because Brett Moffett, of course, is a former champion of the Truck Series. And I think that the truck he would be going in next year, if that is Front Row, I think he would absolutely be better in that truck than he was with like GMS Racing. This would be a truck that's capable of winning championships, and Brett Moffett can always get the best out of equipment. So I think there's a great chance he ends up at Front Row next year in 2024. This, I think, was his audition to get into that truck, and I will say he did a fantastic and a very, very good job running for Front Row, and I really hope he does end up at Front Row next year in 2024 if he doesn't return to AM Racing. But I think it'd be cool for him to go back to AM Racing in 2024 and continue to build that team. Because I think Brett Moffett has gotten the best out of that equipment this year with AM Racing. And another crazy thing that could happen is maybe in the future, if Brett Moffett does well enough in the Truck Series, he goes to Front Row. That could be a potential opportunity for him to eventually get back up to the NASCAR Cup Series, because we don't know how much longer Michael McDowell is going to be around. We know he's going to be back in 2024. I would expect he's probably going to be back in 2025 as well. Michael McDowell, though, is going to be in his mid-40s, probably in his early 40s at that point. And Brett Moffett, of course, in the young 30s, and they would have a veteran driver ready to go to work with a driver like Todd Gillen. So we'll see what happens, but there's a chance and possibility that we can see Brett Moffett with Front Row Motorsports in the 2024 season. We'll have to wait and see what happens. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the 77 Cup car. Now, we're going to talk about Spire Motorsports and KBM in just a little bit, but Jeff Dickerson was asked about the 77 Cup car for 2024. And Jeff Dickerson said to the media that a decision for the 77 car is going to be coming in the next few weeks. Now, a lot of people are wondering who is going to potentially be driving that 77 car in 2024. Well, many people are looking at a driver who's actually driven for Spire Motorsports in the NASCAR Cup Series, and of course, has made a few starts with Legacy Motor Club this year in 2023, and that is Carson Hocevar. Carson Hocevar has been tearing up in the Truck Series here in 2023. He had a very respectful run at Talladega, had a great finish there. I think he's like 23 or 24 points above the cutoff line. And he has scored 3 wins this year in the Truck Series with Nice Motorsports. Obviously, he won at Nashville earlier in the year. He won at Richmond, and then, of course, won his first career truck race at Texas Motor Speedway. And Carson Hocevar is one of the favorites to win the championship currently at the moment as well. And he's been killing it in the Cup Series as well. This was the first race that Carson Hocevar's DNF since Gateway, but he had a pretty good run going. Unfortunately, crashed out at the Cup Series race at Talladega this past week. But he had a really good run going, had a top 20 streak that had been going on. And I think he scored more top 20 finishes in that 42 car than Noah Gragson has scored the whole entire 2023 before, unfortunately, was let go from the organization and from the team. and he made the decision to leave the organization as well. I think Carson OReilly is in a really good position to potentially take over this car in 2024. And if he goes 77 car, because it sounds like Ty Dillon more than likely is not returning that 77 car next year, I think Carson will be an underdog. Maybe I don't know if he's going to make the playoffs, but I think he's going to do the best we've seen anybody in that 77 car, because Carson OReilly can absolutely get the best out of equipment regardless of what equipment he is in. So I'm really excited for Carson OReilly's future. I think he's got a really good chance to be driving, and it sounds more than likely at this point that Carson OReilly is going to be driving the 77 Cup car for Spire in 2024, meaning more than likely the lineup for Spire going to 2024 is Corey LaJoie in the 7 car, Carson OReilly in the 77, and then of course Zane Smith in the 78, which I think that is a very strong lineup. And remember, Spire Motorsports is going to have an alliance with Trackhouse Racing next year in 2024. So it's really exciting stuff, and if Carson does truly end up there, I think it's going to be really, really great for the team, and hopefully we'll see him end up driving for that organization in 2024, but it sounds like there's a really good chance possibly that Carson OReilly is headed over to Spire Motorsports and driving the 77 car in the 2024 NASCAR Cup Series season, which I think he's ready to move up to the Cup Series in 2024. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Kyle Busch Motorsports and Spire Motorsports. Now, we've talked about this on the channel over the last week or so, but it was confirmed on Wednesday that Spire Motorsports has purchased Kyle Busch Motorsports for around $25 million. And there was a little more information that came out in regards to this purchase over this week. And so, of course, Jeff Dickerson and Kyle Busch had their press conference on Saturday at Talladega Superspeedway. And according to what Jeff Dickerson said, Spire had approached Kyle Busch Motorsports and Kyle Busch and Samantha, and they needed a shop. Obviously, Spire Motorsports is expanding their Cup Series program going into 2024. They're going to have 3 cars in the 2024 season. And then, of course, they're going to have, looks like, 3 trucks going into next year in 2024. And according to Kyle Busch, they had purchased it 1 month ago, and that deal had been worked on for the last month or so. Now, like I just mentioned a second ago, they are going to have 3 Cup Series teams in 2024, and they're going to have 3 full-time Truck Series teams going into 2024 as well. Now, interesting, there was a little more information that came out as well on Saturday. Kyle Busch is actually going to be a consultant with Spire Motorsports, overseeing the operation, working to try to help Spire Motorsports build up to be a championship caliber team. And they will drive for Spire Motorsports for 5 races next year as well. Now, speaking of the 3 trucks, getting into that in a second, but obviously Spire Motorsports making some massive moves. They purchased a charter from Live Fast Motorsports and expanded their Cup Series program. And then, of course, they purchased KBM for $25 million. But they needed a bigger shop because of the huge expansion that they are making. Spire Motorsports is absolutely for real, and I do believe Spire Motorsports is looking to be the next team that could take that next step. And I think they have taken a position away from Trackhouse Racing of being the most intriguing team in the sport. Now, the first question we have is who will drive for Spire Motorsports in 2024? Obviously, we know a lot of the employees are moving from Kyle Busch Motorsports over to Spire next year. But the big question revolving is who is going to drive for this team? Well, obviously, we know the KBM. I think they're going to have 3 trucks, probably 1 all-star truck, probably that 7 truck next year. I would think Chase Purdy, who did get a contract extension from Kyle Busch Motorsports, I think he is probably going to end up driving full-time for the team as well. And then other drivers who could have an opportunity, Marco Andretti, I think is a driver to look out for because Marco Andretti's been rumored to maybe want to do a few more Truck Series races in the future. And Marco, of course, does have connections with that Gamebridge money as well. So we may see Marco Andretti get a chance and an opportunity to drive a few races next year or maybe could run full-time. A driver I've seen a lot of people mention is Roger Carruth. Roger Carruth does have a huge connection with the Chevy camp. He's been in Chevy's development program and the Driver's Edge program as well over the last couple seasons, and I think Roger Carruth would be a very, very good driver in their organization if he was end up driving for the team in 2024. And I think Roger this year in the Truck Series has really, really grown. But Roger is also talking to some Xfinity Series teams, and he's going to have a really good opportunity to try out with Hendrick Motorsports at Phoenix in a few weeks. And if he does do really well, that could be a potential possibility for Roger Carruth in 2024 as well, and he could go there. Another team, a driver I'll mention is Matt DiBenedetto. Matt DiBenedetto is someone I think a lot of people could take a chance on. Of course, is not returning to Rackley next year in 2024. In fact, got cut early. We saw Chandler Swift get a top 5, but of course, Matt DiBenedetto was a former winner in 2022 at Talladega, and Matt DiBenedetto always knows how to get the best out of equipment. So I do believe there's a really great chance and possibly that we're going to end up seeing someone get that ride. I think you'll also see drivers because they're going to have a Hendrick Alliance as well going to 2024. You're probably going to see Kyle Larson, William Byron, probably Chase Elliott also drive for the team, but maybe see an opportunity for a guy like Lane Riggs as well. Lane Riggs made his start with Spire Motorsports earlier this year at IRP and was extremely impressive with Spire Motorsports as well. Another guy I'll mention is Kyle Weatherman. Kyle Weatherman is working as a test driver for the team, working as in their technical stuff. Has been doing their simulator work as well. Kyle Weatherman, I think, is a very underrated driver, and if he got a top-tier opportunity, I think he would 1,000% make the best of it. But as for Spire Motorsports, it's really good that they're expanding. But as for KBM, it's going to suck see them no longer around. Which they're going to technically be around next year because Kyle Busch is still going to be working with Brexton Busch, but it's only going to be existing there. This could be a potential possibility in the future, and maybe in the future Kyle Busch does open up his truck team once again. But nonetheless, I think that they're making some huge moves right now, and a lot of things are happening currently in the truck series, especially with Spire Motorsports, as they have purchased KBM, and they will be expanding in the 2023 NASCAR season. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Aric Almirola. Now, Aric Almirola has still not made a decision in regards to his future in the NASCAR Cup Series. In this past weekend, Bob Parkes, many people in the industry, asked Aric Almirola questions about his plans for 2024. And Aric Almirola said this past weekend as well that he still has no decision on 2024. A lot of people believe in the industry that Aric Almirola is going to retire at the end of the 2023 season. Some have been speculating, including Dale Jr., that he can move back down to the Xfinity Series in 2024. But many do believe that Aric Almirola at Smithfield is going to be not back in the 2024 season, which has been rumored really for the last 2 years. Now, Aric Almirola originally was supposed to retire at the end of the 2022 season, but Aric Almirola decided to come back for one more year in 2023. I believe that Aric Almirola will retire at the end of the 2023 season simply because of the fact that Aric Almirola is not having as much fun this year in 2023. Granted, he did win his second pole of the 2023 season. That other pole, I believe, coming Atlanta or another track earlier in the year. But of course, I think Aric Almirola's had a frustrating year. But it's no secret, like I've already mentioned in this video, that Stewart-Haas Racing has not had a good year in 2023. And I think they're already ready to move on for 2024. Now, the big question right now revolves around who will get that ride in 2024. Well, right now, the lead candidate for the 10 car next year, if Aric Almirola does decide to retire, right now is Cole Custer. Cole Custer currently is driving the 004 for Stewart-Haas Racing, and his dad is the president of Stewart-Haas Racing, that being Joe Custer. And Cole Custer has raced in the Cup Series before from 2020 up until 2022. And Cole Custer did struggle, but I think a lot of that is the struggles of Stewart-Haas Racing more than anything else. So maybe Cole Custer could do better if he moves up the Cup. But honestly, I don't think he's going to do better if he does take over the number 10 car, simply because of the fact that Cole Custer isn't maybe the greatest driver in the world, but I don't think Cole Custer is as bad of a driver as we give him out. I think a lot of it is Stewart-Haas Racing struggles because I think the future of SHR is really uncertain right now. There are a lot of people thinking maybe Stewart-Haas Racing could downsize at the end of 2023, but I think the chances of them downsizing are going to happen at the end of 2024 when they lose their contract with Ford, because there have been talks that we're going to downsize as many as 2 cars. We know that Ryan Preece is for sure coming back next year, and it sounds like Aric Almirola more than likely is going to retire at the end of the 2023 season, but we're waiting on that currently at the moment. Riley Herbst, another driver to look out for, but Riley Herbst, I think, could be going to another team. There's a lot of people starting to think that he may end up driving for Joe Gibbs next year in 2024, because there's that rumor back a few months ago that was mentioned on Door Pumper Clear that a former JGR driver could be headed back to Joe Gibbs Racing, which Riley Herbst is a former Joe Gibbs Racing driver technically, so maybe we see him go there next year in 2024, and maybe that we see Herbst go Cup Racing, but I think he might be leaving. Hailie Deegan's also one I mentioned, but Hailie Deegan, we'll talk about her just a little bit as well. Other drivers like maybe Frankie Muniz or somebody could get an opportunity, but I think more than likely at this point, Aric Almirola is going to retire and Cole Custer is probably taking a seat. I want to say this about Eric Almirola. Eric Almirola is a good driver. It's just like I said, that SHR has just fallen off their feet over the last few years. Remember, Eric Almirola just 3 years ago made the playoffs and was one of the more consistent drivers in 2020 as well. It's just that SHR has just fallen off a cliff and fallen off the planet over the last few years. And I don't know what they got to do to fix and change things at that team, but there's a lot of things that need to be worked on for this team to be better for the future. Because obviously with Eric Almirola retiring, you don't have Zane Smith anymore, and they lost that opportunity. Zane's out. That's a big loss for Ford. You've also got other drivers that are basically out of it. You don't have Kyle Busch or Kyle Larson to go to, and both those drivers could have been an SHR. And while I don't think Kyle Larson would have set the world on fire with SHR, I think they would have been in a better position if they had Kyle Larson. And I don't think anybody's really the issue. It's just that I don't think anyone wants to go to SHR. It's not a coveted ride currently at the moment because SHR is not a very good and great team currently at the moment. So nonetheless, we'll see what happens in regards to the future of Stewart-Haas Racing, but I really think SHR is in a lot of trouble for the future, and it sounds like Eric Almirola is going to retire at the end of the year, and Cole Custer's probably going to be taking that seat in the 2024 NASCAR Cup Series season. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the first of three major stories in today's episode as we're talking about Matt Crafton versus Nick Sanchez. Now, if you watch the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race at Talladega, the big story came out after the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race. So with about 10 or 15 laps ago, actually 3 laps ago in the Truck Series race, there was a big wreck that was kind of started by Nick Sanchez, but also started by Matt Crafton. And Matt Crafton kind of came down, and Nick Sanchez was there and got into Matt Crafton. It's one of those racing deals with super speedways when you're coming to the end of the race and you're battling trying to get up front because Nick had one of the best trucks in the field, and Matt Crafton had kind of been a little bit in the way and wasn't even in the playoffs anymore currently there. Well, things started getting escalated because Matt Crafton first stopped in Nick Sanchez's pit stall to kind of share a message. Then, after the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race, about 20 minutes after, there was a post-race altercation that took place in the garage and a fight that broke out between both Nick Sanchez and Matt Crafton. And Nick Sanchez had a bloody face. I can't show that image because I will probably get demonetized for that. But Nick Sanchez's face was very, very bloody after the incident and the wreck that ended up taking place. And then Nick Sanchez basically threatened he was going to go kill Matt Crafton, if I'm not mistaken. It says, "I'm going to kill you" at Homestead, which I don't think Nick Sanchez really meant that. And then, of course, there was a lot that happened there. So what exactly happened according to what Nick Sanchez said? Well, Nick Sanchez basically said that Matt Crafton approached him, tapped him on the shoulder, and gave him a sucker punch in the face. Basically saying that what he said there, and I really don't know why Matt Crafton was mad about that. But then Matt Crafton also, after put out a statement, it took him nearly 24 hours to then release his own statement in this situation. And he says that basically, I did not sucker punch him. There was an altercation that ended up taking place between me and Nick Sanchez. Words were exchanged. And then I basically punched him in the face. And then he went on in his statement. And the funny thing is, he put the "try that in a small town" thing in his 6-part statement. And then he basically said that all the videos didn't show and all the eyewitnesses said there was more to this story than meets the eye in the situation. And then, like I said, had a 6-part document, which is a little weird to me that it took him almost 24 hours to put out a statement, because in my opinion, it should not take you 24 hours to put out a statement. You should have put it out that evening. If you would put it out a little more earlier in the evening, I would believe Matt Crafton a little bit more. Then last night, after the NASCAR Cup Series race, just really good for screen capping this, but Nick Sanchez's mother put out a statement kind of confirming what Nick had said. And of course, obviously, well, of course, Nick's mom's going to defend him because, yeah, Nick's mom, of course, the mom is going to defend, and mothers generally never lie in these situations. Look, I don't know who's completely right in the situation. I don't know what's going to happen. Again, I think there's always 2 sides to every story. There's actually always 3 sides to every story. There's a side of Nick Sanchez, there's a side of Matt Crafton, and there's always a third side being the truth in the situation. If you were to ask me, though, in the situation who's in the right, I would have to go on the side of Nick Sanchez, because Nick Sanchez had a bloody face after the incident and the situation. And I feel like Matt Crafton, regardless, should not got into a fight with a driver that's over half his age younger. Matt Crafton is 47 years old. Nick Sanchez is 22. And for Matt Crafton to get that pissed off and upset over a super speedway wreck that we've seen many, many times before in NASCAR history over the years, to me, I think that's extremely childish on Matt Crafton. Now, do I think Matt Crafton's going to get suspended? If what Nick Sanchez is true and he got sucker punched, I do believe that we're going to see Matt Crafton suspended maybe for the rest of this season. But I don't know if NASCAR is going to do that because we saw Austin Hill sucker punch Maya Snyder last year, but I don't think that is the same situation because there was escalation going on. Basically, Austin Hill had told Maya Snyder to back off. Maya Snyder did not back off in the situation, and then we saw Austin Hill send Maya Snyder basically to the Shadow Realm. It's not the same thing. It's kind of similar, but it's not completely the same thing that ended up happening. And look, Nick Sanchez, even if he made a mistake, it wasn't fully Nick Sanchez's fault for the wreck, by the way. You're going for a position with 3 laps to go. That kind of stuff happens. It's always happened in super speed racing. And for Matt Crafton to get that upset at a 22-year-old driver being 47 years old, I'm not usually for drivers asking for them to retire, but Matt Crafton at this point, if you're getting that mad over a super speed wreck, you should retire at this point, especially because Matt Crafton, let's be honest, let's talk about the guy. The guy is a 3-time champion and has a chance to go into the NASCAR Hall of Fame. It has won 15 races. A pretty good career if you ask me. But Matt Crafton has not been relevant or really a deserving championship contender in 6 or 7 years. Now, people say 2019 is deserved, but he wasn't even the most consistent driver. He had like a 12th or 13th place average finish in the playoffs, and the only reason he won is because of one race deciding it, and he didn't even win the race. He finished second because Austin Hill, who I think was better than him that year, would have won the championship if he had been in the championship for that entire year. If you were to ask me in a situation I think is more the right, I think I got to go with Nick Sanchez. Now, do I think Nick Sanchez will get in some trouble? At the least, Nick Sanchez might get fined. I don't know if, at the least, he's not probably going to get talked by NASCAR for saying that. And Nick says he really didn't mean that. I don't think Nick meant to say that. I think when you're in the heat of the moment situation, you're going to say some things that you're going to end up regretting. So in my opinion, when it comes to this situation, I'm leaning on the side of Nick Sanchez, but we'll wait to see what NASCAR decides. NASCAR is investigating the situation currently at the moment, and there's a really good chance and possibility that we're going to see penalties handed out here really, really soon. If you were to ask me, I think there's a chance that Matt Crafton gets suspended, but I think there's also a chance he might just get fined for the situation. Matt did apologize later, but it took him such a long time to release a statement, and I'm starting to be inclined that more on the Nick Sanchez side than the Matt Crafton side. But we'll wait to see what happens and what ends up getting revealed. Nonetheless, though, we had a fight between Nick Sanchez and Matt Crafton after the Truck Series race. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next major story in today's episode as we're talking about Harrison Burton. Now, there's been a lot of talk about this over the last weeks, but it's officially confirmed over the weekend, and Harrison Burton officially confirmed to the media this past weekend that he will be returning to the Wood Brothers in 2024 and will be driving the 21 car once again in 2024. Now, Harrison Burton has been driving for the Wood Brothers the last couple of years, and let's be honest, Harrison Burton has not had a good year in the NASCAR Cup Series. He actually is likely to finish worse in the points this year than he did in his rookie year. I think he finished 29th or 20th in the points in 2022. Currently, at the moment, I think he's 30th or 31st in the points. Now, Harrison Burton, to his credit, has had a couple good runs in the Cup Series this year. He's actually had a couple really strong performances. I go back to Darlington earlier in the year where he had a top 10 run going and was contending very, very well. But the big reason why Harrison Burton is going back to Wood Brothers in 2024 is because of the sponsorship and funding. Remember, Harrison Burton has had a big commitment with Dex Imaging really since the beginning of his NASCAR career. And back to his ARCA days as well in 2016 and 2017. Obviously, I think Dex Imaging has a pretty big partnership with his father, Jeff Burton. And Jeff Burton is also a pretty big reason why Harrison Burton is sticking around. And he's also got the KHI connection as well. Now, look, I think that there are better drivers that could have driven a 21 car, but let's be honest with ourselves. I will give Harrison Burton a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. Remember, Harrison Burton is only 23 years old. I think he turns 23 in the next couple of weeks. He's a very, very relatively young driver. And let's be for real. Team Penske and that organization has struggled in the 2023 year. Last year, there weren't as many excuses because Team Penske was a lot better in 2022. But this year in 2023, Team Penske has fallen off a cliff. Joey Logano got eliminated in the round of 16. Yes, Ryan Blaney did win and get to the round of 8, but Ryan Blaney's been hit or miss this year, especially in the second half of the season. And then you have Austin Cindric, who's been completely irrelevant this year in 2023. He's not had a lot of good races. He did get a top 5 finish this past weekend at Talladega, but it's not been a great year for Austin Cindric in 2023. And obviously, Harrison Burton is driving technically a Team Penske car. I'm not sure how much technical alliance they are getting, but nonetheless, I think Harrison Burton is deserving of another year. But this upcoming season for Harrison Burton is going to be a make or break year, in my opinion, because Harrison Burton is going to be expected to have a much better year in 2024 than he's had the last 2 years. And I hope that he can have a better year. He's going to have a new crew chief next year. Obviously going to be working with Jeremy Bones once again in 2024. And I think Jeremy Bones is a pretty solid crew chief. And Jeremy Bones, when he was working with Ryan Blaney, they had a lot of magic, and they really kind of almost rekindled that magic in 2017. And Ryan Blaney's sophomore year got that win at Pocono and made it to the round of 8. But to be fair, the Wood Brothers team isn't the fastest organization in the world either. I think outside of when Ryan Blaney drove for the team and when Matt Benedetto drove for the team, which Matt Benedetto I think was way better than Harrison Burton was, I think that, the team was in a lot better position. And of course, this year we've seen Harrison Burton struggle at times. And again, I do think Harrison Burton does have talent. Just a few years ago in 2020, Harrison Burton went on to basically go out and win 4 races in his rookie year. Obviously struggled in the Truck Series at KBM those few years. Then goes Xfinity and wins 4 races, but couldn't back it up in 2021. I think with Harrison Burton, he gets another year in my opinion, but if he cannot step it up the plate in 2025, or 24 I should say, there's a very good chance and possibly next year could be Harrison Burton's final year with the Wood Brothers if he can't step it up to the plate. But he needs to really start doing some stuff going into the 2024 season, because in my personal and honest opinion, next year is a make or break year for Harrison Burton. It's going to be his 3rd year in the Cup Series, which we all know that he's kind of like a long-term project with the Wood Brothers, but man, at some point you've got to do a much better job and you got to be a bigger contender, because like I said, Harrison Burton has been extremely hit or miss in the last 2 years, has not really been great with the Wood Brothers, and of course he's got sponsorship funding, which is a pretty massive and a huge reason why he's sticking around with the Wood Brothers once again in 2024. But next year is a pretty big year for Harrison Burton. He needs to step up to the plate, do a much better job. Hopefully he can do that going to next year and have a much better season. He needs to have a good year. Hopefully he can do that with Wood Brothers and have a much better year in the 2024 NASCAR Cup Series season. And hopefully this will be some help from Team Penske and they can be better. I think if Penske's better, I think the Wood Brothers are going to be much better as well, because while I don't think they get the biggest technical lines as they used to, I think they still get somewhat of technical lines. I think that's kind of a huge reason, because Team Penske struggled in the 2023 season. Hopefully we see Harrison Burton have a much better year in 2024. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode, as we're talking about Hailie Deegan and her future in NASCAR. Now, over the last week or two, there's been a lot of chatter in regards to Hailie Deegan's future. And a lot of people have been asking her questions. Well, Hailie Deegan was asked, I believe, by someone from Frontenac. I think it was Brian Nolan, if I'm not mistaken, who talked to her. Was Michael Massey from Frontenac, who spoke to her after the NASCAR Truck Series race, where she actually got a very respectful 8th place finish. She had a very good run in that race. Well, she kind of held back in the back, but we've seen a lot of drivers do this in the past, where they kind of hold back till the end of the race. And you know what? She did that and got a top 10 finish out of it. And she got her 5th career top 10 finish in the Truck Series. Well, like I said, there's a lot of talk about Hailie Deegan's future in the Truck Series and what she is going to be doing in the 2024 season. But she says she's still working on her 2024 NASCAR plans, and it still has not made a decision, is working on what is going to be best for her in 2024. Now, there's been a lot of teams that have been talked about her. There's a chance that she could potentially return to ThorSport Racing in 2024. Let's be honest, she has not had a great year with ThorSport Racing this season. And again, it's been a disappointing year for having one of the worst seasons in the Truck Series there. There's a chance she could go to Farmer Motorsports Truck Series program, maybe drive the 38 truck next year in the 2024 year. That would be a little bit of an upgrade for her, but we've seen Farmer have a little bit of a down year this year in 2023 compared to 2022. And drivers like Brett Moffett or Frankie Muniz are kind of linked to those rides as well. There's also some other options that could be available in the Truck Series, but a lot of people, including myself, are speculating that Hailie Deegan may move up to the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2024. Now, if you were to ask me about Hailie Deegan, I think, yes, she has not been great in the Truck Series in the few years that she's ran there. She's only scored 5 career Truck Series top 10s, which is not really great, and a lot of people don't believe that she would be deserving to move up. But I want to give Hailie Deegan a little bit of benefit of doubt. And I go back to that one Xfinity Series race that she ran with SS Greenlight Racing in the 07 car, where she actually ended up finishing in the top 15 in her debut, finishing 13th, finished on the lead lap, by the way, and completed all the laps and kept her nose clean and didn't do anything stupid throughout the entire race, which is what you can ask for someone like Hailie Deegan, who's making her debut. And I also go back to the GT race that she ran earlier this year at Daytona. Remember, she ended up finishing in led some laps in that GT race with TCRs and ended up having a really good chance to go for the victory. So Hailie Deegan is not an untalented driver. I kind of go with the Harrison Burton trend. We talked about Harrison Burton obviously returning to the Wood Brothers in 2024, but I kind of compare a little bit to Harrison Burton. Harrison Burton was very bad in the Truck Series for the Cabo Motorsports Standards. He goes to Joe Gibbs Racing the next year and wins 4 races. I'm not saying she's on the same level as Harrison Burton, but I kind of go to the Harrison Burton route where I think she could be better in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. And a lot of people feel like that if she moves up to Xfinity, she is going to do a lot better. And Hailie Deegan, it's no secret, does want to move up to the NASCAR Xfinity Series in the 2024 season. Let's talk about where she could go, though, if she is moved up to Xfinity Series in 2024. The first team she could go to is Stewart-Haas Racing. Stewart-Haas Racing is one of the best teams in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, and there's a really good chance that Cole Custer could move up to the Xfinity Cup Series in 2024, and there's also a chance that Riley Herbst might move on from there. However, Tony Stewart has said publicly that as of recently that they've got a lot of irons in the fire currently at the moment, trying to figure out what they're going to be doing with their Cup program, trying to make their Cup program a lot better as well. So that's not the most likely at this point, but there is a chance there. There's also SS Greenlight Racing. SS Greenlight Racing in the 08 car. Now, a lot of people say that they're a Chevy team, but they actually ran Chevys in Fords this year. They used to be a full-on Ford team last year. But if she is to go to SS Greenlight Racing, it would be with the 08 car because they've ran more Fords with that team this year than Chevys. But I don't think they get in the lines at SHR anymore, and they've kind of struggled. You've also got RSS Racing. RSS Racing has an alliance with Stewart-Haas Racing. They've had a pretty decent year. They've had some good runs. They actually got a win with Eric Almirola with SHR equipment as well as Sonoma. And Zane Smith actually, we've got a top 10 as well with that team at Nashville in his first or second Xfinity Series start in a very long time. So that's another possibility. But the most likely spot for Hailie Deegan going into the 2024 NASCAR Xfinity Series season, if she is move up next year, is AM Racing. AM Racing is going to be looking to expand going into the 2024 season. They're looking to have 2 cars next year, and she's been heavily linked to AM Racing for 2024. Now, I think AM Racing is a solid team overall. They've joined the Xfinity Series on a full-time basis this year in 2023. And Brett Moffett has done really, really great with that equipment. They've got an alliance with Stewart-Haas Racing, and I think they've done a great job this season with Brett Moffett for the standards of a first-year team. And there's a really good chance at this point that Brett Moffett more than likely may not be, in fact, returning to that team going into the 2024 season. So, because Brett Moffett, of course, could return to AM, but there's a chance he's also going back to front row and jump back down to the Truck Series in 2024. Hailie Deegan and Ford really have a good connection together, and AM Racing would be a decent team to go there. They're not the top team. They're not the top dog in the sport, but they're not a bad team either. They've shown flashes of brilliance this year in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. And again, Brett Moffitt's had some good runs with the team. And I think Hailie Deegan would do the same. I'm not saying, like I said, that Hailie Deegan's going to set the world on fire if she moves up to Xfinity, but I certainly think she would do a better job if she ran in the NASCAR Xfinity Series than she did in the Truck Series. I think she'll run a lot better, and I think she will move up next year. And I think AM Racing is the most likely spot going into the 2024 season. Now, when do I think it'll be announced? It'll probably be announced in the foreseeable future if she moves up. She's obviously, like I said, still working on her 2024 NASCAR plans currently at the moment. I wouldn't also be shocked and surprised if crazily she makes some Cup Series starts, maybe Rick or Racing, though they could lose a charter. But I think at this point, more than likely, she moves up. I think it's going to be with AM Racing next year, and I think she'll do a good job if she heads AM Racing in 2024. So we'll see what happens in regards to her future, but I think at this particular point, Hailie Deegan is going to end up in AM Racing's NASCAR Xfinity Series team in the 2024 season. So, that is for today's NASCAR news and motorsports news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and bring on Patreon as well. Links description below that, and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. Do you think Hailie Deegan's headed to AM Racing or not? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What are your thoughts about the Nick Sanchez and Matt Crafton fight? And what are your thoughts about Harrison Burton returning to the Wood Brothers in 2024? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Later today on the channel, there should be the race picks for the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at the Charlotte Roval. Then tomorrow on the channel, there might be a double upload day coming if the schedule does get released, or if it gets released later today, there might be a video later today on that. And then, of course, like I said, there'll be a silly season update dropping tomorrow as well. Got a lot of great content dropping on the channel that I cannot wait for you guys to check out. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.